Hello, everybody. Hope you're good. And didn't really expect to be making a video today in between the 24-hour grind. I woke up yesterday at like 7:30 or something in the evening, having done the 24-hour grind, to some pretty bad news. So, as you can see from the title, what we're going to be doing is going through the Community Day posts for April and then sort of looking over the issues and basically sort of listing counter arguments and stuff for it. And there's a lot. We'll talk about the common day window changing for the timing. We'll talk about the incense. We're going to talk about the quality of events. We're going to talk about the whole shenanigans back in August 2021 with the Pokestop radius, Niantic's fake messaging with all of their posts and everything, and yes, buckle up. It's going to be a long one, and I will start off by saying this is obviously my take on everything. You're entitled to your own opinion. It's a free internet space. If you disagree or agree or whatever, let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comments below, because it's a talking point. Also, this will be quite a raw edit. I won't be cutting too much out of this apart from when my camera auto shuts off after a quarter of an hour. So let's bring up the thing that has once again enraged a lot of the community. It's brilliant. So the actual April Comm Day choice I think is quite good. Stufful, or whatever it is, it's a brand new Pokemon from Gen 7. The first new shiny for a Comm Day we've had in forever. I think the last one was Oshawott as a new shiny, so that's good. But then immediately the article goes into this: Community Day adjustments. We also wanted to take a moment to discuss with you, I'm also going to read it wrong, some changes to the Community Day format we'll be testing. So first and foremost, it's set in stone for April. It's not set in stone going forward. So that's why it's important to speak up now. In 2020, we doubled the length of Community Day events, extending them from 3 hours to 6. Since then, however, we found that only 5% of our trainers tend to participate in the event for more than 3 hours. One of the biggest pieces of positive feedback that we received after January's 3-hour Community Day Classic was players and community leaders noticed how much more the community was out and about during the event. So for Stufful Community Day, we're returning to the 3-hour format. Our hope is that doing so will create even more opportunities for trainers to play together and connect outside as they're exploring. We know that trainers have enjoyed all of the extra resources that could be collected during longer events, so we're adding some new and exciting perks to Stufful Community Day to give you the ability to collect just as many resources during gameplay. Check them out below. We won't be checking them out below because there'll be a tips and tricks video closer to the Community Day time talking about all of that on the channel. It's not necessarily important for this discussion. So yes, Niantic have decided, it's time. After, stop myself, I have collected points. I've spent all evening and morning writing these and getting my head in gear with it. Niantic have decided it's time to go back to 3-hour window Comm Days. And the window in question is 2 PM to 5 PM your local time. So, jumping into this discussion, apologies if I don't look into the camera too much. I'm going to be reading off of this, and me and reading has never gone hand in hand for all 27 years of my life due to good old dyslexia. So, first of all, they said 5% of players only play the full 6 hours. Now, two things with this. First and foremost, I would like to see the data for this, because I can't believe that people didn't participate for more than 3 hours on Gible and Eevee Comm Days. Maybe for Sandshrew and everything else. You'll notice I might repeat myself quite a lot. The last 2 years of Community Days, apart from Gible and perhaps Eevee, have been utterly dismal. They have been horrifically bad. If you roll it back to when 3-hour Community Days were the standard and norm, 2018 and 2019, we had things like Bagon, Trico, Ralts and well, not necessarily Trapinch, I know, but it is technically a sort of three-stage evolution. We had Beldum, we had Dratini, we had the Gen 1, the Gen 3 starters. It was rare Pokemon, good raid meta Pokemon, and the starters, and then one or two others that were thrown in there for the mix. Rhyhorn finally got its Com Day in February of 2020. They were good community days. It's a fact that I have vocalised a lot on the channel over the last 2 years, and I know a lot of people have done exactly the same thing. The selection choice for Community Day Pokemon is terrible. And remember when they did the dev diary, the first ever video dev diary, and they said, how we choose Community Day Pokemon? Two things. We don't necessarily care about your process of choosing them, because the process of choosing them is wrong. It's just stupid. And there's too much focus on PvP. And the focus on PvP meta really plays into probably why their stats show that only 5% of people do more than 3 hours on a community day. We'll come on to that. I would like to actually know the stats for Gibblecom Day, because Gibblecom Day was the first good community day. It was June 2021, so 18 months of terrible com days. And we just come off the back of Swablu Com Day the month before, where everybody was going, what are you doing, Niantic? Right, the focus on PvP community days. PvP, a mon for PvP, you need a specific set of stats. It varies from mon to mon. If you get something reasonably close to the rank 1 or whatever, then you're good. And if you need it, most of the PvP mons have been Great League or Ultra League focused. Very few are focused on Master League, where you need Candy and XL Candy to get them to level 40 or level 50 respectively. Majority of them, you just need to evolve them, put a tiny amount of Stardust in it to get it to 1500 or 2500, and then you're done. So the PvP focus for community days has drastically reduced the necessity to grind, to go outside, to play, to explore, to interact with the community, because you could, quite legitimately, sit in a cafe on your own doing something else with an incense running. We'll come on to the incense a bit later, and you'll more than likely get something decent-ish for PvP. I think the PvP focus on Community Day Pokemon has really been one of the biggest detriments to the whole event concept. The key case in point actually is looking, I've written it down, I'm going to repeat myself all the time. Look at Gible versus Sandshrew. Apart from anything else, that when you hear it, Gible Com Day versus Sandshrew Community Day, they were Pokemon that were given the exact same event space. Are they worthy of the same event space? I don't think so. Gible Com Day, June 2021, for my local crew, it brought people out who had given up the game for 2 years. They'd come out for the first time in 2 years to play the game because it was Gible Community Day. I saw people who'd done community days from home for the first time in 18 months. The park was buzzing. It was more buzzing than it was for the Go Fest that year. More people came out for Gible Com Day than for Go Fest 2021. That's a community day. I know it's Gible. Gible is loved and adored and it's really good. But that shows the stark contrast to Sandshrew Community Day. Now, I am basing this off rough reports. Barely anybody actually ventured out for Sandshrew Community Day in my local squad. I went off to Stroud and played with Coolstar and one or two other. Literally, from the Stroud crew, it was, I think I saw four people all day for Sandshrew Com Day. It was a glorious, sunshine-filled day. Perfect to go outside, but because it's Sandshrew, quite rightfully I would say, couldn't be bothered. Even I didn't bother for more than 4 hours. We decided to just go back and have a coffee or something. Because you think, Sandshrew, I needed 1 or 2 for PvP. That's it. I don't need XL for it. That's the stark contrast. Also on Sandshrew Community Day, a friend of mine didn't even, people would tend to go for auto catch, because do you really want to spend hours catching Sandshrews? Went auto catch, and then went on a Rocket Leader hunt for 12-kilometre eggs to do with the quarter hatch egg distance bonus. So that community day actually divided the community. Some people couldn't be bothered. Some people needed to get 1 or 2 shinies of whichever form they didn't have before. Some people focused on trying to get a PvP IV1. Others thought, I'm going to go for a 12-kilometre egg grind because that's more valuable to me than sandshrew catching. So that community day actually did the exact opposite of what Niantic set out to do with community days in the first place. One of the bigger issues, timings. They've reduced it to 3 hours. It's 2 to 5 PM. But timings aren't the issue. As I said, the quality of the event is. And this actually bleeds over into a lot of aspects of the game, certainly in the last 3 months, I would say. Example, the legendary raids for 2022, all of them have been completely useless. We've had 3 months of dead raids, dead level 5 raids, to the point where people are literally just getting a Pokédex and done. Or as soon as they get the shiny, they're done. We've moaned about this on the Incensed podcast with defense form Deoxys and stuff, and also Therian Tornadus. Once you get your shiny of a bad legendary, you're done. Why would you raid it even more unless you are a hardcore Hella raider, in which case just mad respect for continuously going after a specific raid. The community days are getting worse and worse, and it's making actually the December reroll less and less important. To the point now where you think, so we've got Spheal, Hoppip, and Sandshrew. If you've played those community days, the December reroll is not needed. You just don't need to partake. And they say 5% are only in it for 3 hours. Well, apart from anything else, that's quite a sweeping statement, because apparently only 5% of the player base play more than 3 hours. But what about the 95% that apparently in Niantic's data and stats only do the 3 hours? I bet you any amount of money that the entire global player base, who are the 95% in these stats, don't all play the same 3 hours, because not everybody leads the same life. It's a very sweeping take on it from Niantic's perspective. I'm pretty sure that more people will be able to access the community day, even if it is for a shorter time frame with a 6-hour window, because you may have people who have a football game in the afternoon. Key case in point, some of my local crew go to a football game on the Saturday or Sunday or whatever, so they miss out on the last 2 to 3 hours of the community day at the moment. Some people might have something going on in the morning. Some people might have stuff going on during the day. Some people might be working and can only do the first half an hour and the last half an hour. I don't think, and I know that the biggest argument I've seen on Twitter is people going, "But it used to be 3 hours." The biggest complaint was the 3-hour window, and people were like, I can't do the community day because it's inaccessible due to my life schedule. And there have been other sweeping statements from other people on social media that make you just want to bang your head against the wall. It's sort of like, now we've had 6-hour community days for a year. No, 2 years. What am I talking about? Since 2020 April. This is literally 2 years. And more people have been able to access community days than before because of that 6-hour window. It meant that you don't necessarily have to utilise all 6 hours. You could work it into your schedule. The problem is that Niantic don't like that viewpoint on it. They don't like that fact. They want people, and it's clear they literally wrote it in black and white. We want people to play together to the detriment of basically everything else. So if you can't play from 2 to 5, tough. So that's their philosophy on it. They're forcing people to play together in a time frame that they think is correct, which I think is the wrong strat, personally. I think that's the wrong way to go, given what we've had over the last 2 years. Also, if you happen to be mobility affected, unable to play outside, I don't know, whatever the circumstances, if you're stuck using Incense, you will get the grand total this community day, for Stufful community day, of 56 spawns with the reduced Incense effectiveness. And I think we'll come on to possible solutions and creative ways to get around this, but 56 spawns for a community day is basically a big middle finger to anybody who happens to have something going on between 2 to 5 on that community day. I think that's it's a very short-sighted thing for Niantic to have done. Combine the ineffective Incense with now a shortened Community Day window. Oh dear, let's talk about the Com Day Classic. One of the main things that they're judging this on is the feedback that they supposedly got from Bulbasaur Com Day Classic. Now, at the time, I would certainly say, and I said it in my video, it's a bloody good idea. It was a really good concept, and we kept saying, oh, this is great. The reasons being, and I put multiple tweets out, and people have had exactly the same reactions on Twitter. I've seen loads of people tweeting this. Because for a variety of reasons we liked it. One, Bulbasaur. They wrote it on their freaking blog post. It's a fan favourite, so obviously more people are going to go out for that than for Sandshrew or Hoppip, you blithering idiots. Two, it's the first chance that people who've picked up the game during the pandemic, or even after 2018, it was the third ever Community Day, so March 2018 was Bulbasaur Com Day. It's the first chance anybody who's picked up the game, well actually technically December I guess, December of 2018. It's the first chance that a lot of players are going to be able to get to partake in a Bulbasaur Com Day. It's a 3-hour classic Community Day. We thought it was a new event style, new event thing. People liked it because new players could get their day. OG players didn't have to suffer through a month of wasted Community Day where we thought, oh, this is a repeated Com Day, blah, 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 I'm not going to bother. They got OG players like myself and a lot of you out there, we got an extra event, a bonus event on top of the Sphere Com Day that was January. So that was one of the main reasons people liked it. And I genuinely don't know how, whether it's Niantic just being Niantic or whether it's the community leaders' feedback that's either genuine or being twisted by Niantic to suit their own purpose. They've somehow got all of that information and gone, it was the 3-hour window. Are you mad? Are you actually stupid? I'll probably say that Bulbasaur Com Day Classic was the best Community Day event, with the tag of Community Day, since Eevee in August of 2020, or 2021, sorry. That's a long time. That's a good sort of 5 months or something, isn't it? And you think that's a long time for a good Com Day to actually turn around and stuff. When they did that Com Day Classic, they said we're trialling a new style of event. They didn't say anything about trialling the time window effectiveness and player duration or anything like that. They never said it like that. They said it was a new event for us to all play. So yes, it's Niantic taking one very, very, very minuscule factor of the data and the gameplay and the feedback possibly from that Community Day and are thinking, right, we're going to generalise that for everything. I don't understand this. It's clear. It's been clear to me for however many years that Niantic literally don't play the game. They don't play the game like a normal player. They play Pokemon Go, if they do at all, in some very weird backwards way where they sort of think like, oh, I need to go to this Pokestop to explore, and I can only be bothered to play for 3 hours because it means I can see more people and stuff. No. Again, we'll come on to this in a bit more detail later. It's the quality of the events and things like that that's the biggest dictation on who actually bothers to want to go out to play, genuinely. I want to know what happened to the community leaders' feedback, and I want to know what that feedback was, because I don't have any interaction or connection with Niantic. I'm just a very, very small fish in the big pond of social media and YouTube in terms of this. But I want to know what the feedback that was given was. Was it outlined specifically that 3 hours window was better, or was that something that Niantic have concluded themselves? Something I've seen a lot of on social media, and like I said, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but I feel as a content creator / community leader, you need to have a viewpoint of all other players, like players who have different ranges of gameplay and expectations and stuff, and ability to go outside and play, and people who maybe you know, I couldn't do the whole day, etc. There's a lot of factors that, you know, vary throughout the Pokemon Go community and affect people's ability to play the entire day. This sentence may not make any sense. If it doesn't, I apologise. I've seen a lot of community leaders saying, I like the 3-hour window because it makes it easier for me to stream, to film, and then to edit. I think that's a very, very self-centered take on the whole event and the whole message behind this, because as a content creator, two things: we are a very, very, very tiny percentage of the player base. What we do in terms of making videos or streaming it is quite unique, and that shouldn't be the dictation as to the length of a community day. I personally will grind. I mean, you've seen I've grinded events for 24 hours non-stop. I've also done a grind for like half an hour or something. I will grind an event for however long I judge it to be and however I feel like I want to. But I don't think that the fact that a community leader goes, it's easier for me to make a video in 3 hours and edit it and get it up quicker, that shouldn't be a factor in this argument, because it's not actually something that affects the vast, in fact, like the vast percentage of the player base and their community day. It's stupid. I think it's a really stupid argument, personally. It's also the fact that, like, you know, we as a content creator basis, we put, you know, our schedules around this game. You know, the game and its events and everything kind of dictate what we do in terms of videos and streams and stuff. Like, obviously we stream Raid Hour, apart from this week because I was asleep the entire time, I was knackered, but Raid Hours and Spotlight Hours and community days and weekend events and stuff. There's a lot of structure for community leaders and people who make content on Pokemon Go. You know, we are dictated by the game's events, whereas a lot of people, majority of people, are dictated on other outside aspects, like if they're working on the weekend, if they've got family commitments, if they've got other things like sports events or whatever to go to. The fact still remains, and it goes back to something I said earlier, is we don't have the same outlook on a community day as the vast majority of the general public, because they're working a community day around what they're doing. You know, some people might grind for the full 6 hours, but apparently only 5% do that, Niantic. People work community day around what they're doing. Content creators don't. What we do on that community day is the community day. We're going back to the old Comday Classic argument. Comday Classic should be 3 hours. That should be a 3-hour event because the Classic implies a classic vibe. You've got an old community day Pokemon with the old time frame 3-hour window, and it's getting its old community day move. It's a carbon copy of something that happened years ago, getting a reboot as an extra special event. But we haven't seen any head nor tail of another second Comday Classic. We're now approaching April. I'm hoping that we get one. We're now 3 months into the year and we've had one Comday Classic. They immediately got a lot of positive feedback, and now they've twisted the positive feedback to make other community days worse and happen for less time. We could get Comday Classics for all the starters, get all the starters, Generation 1, Generation 3 going. We could get Ralts, we can get Bagon, we can get Beldum. Larvitar deserves a little rerun. There's loads that actually deserve a Comday Classic. I really don't know why they're dragging their heels on that. Like, how much, like, they've clearly said in the article, we received this feedback from Comday Classic. But they've made the normal Comday that happens every month worse as a result of that, rather than saying, we're going to bring back a Comday Classic for a second time. I hope they say something in the near future as to a second Comday Classic, because the event was good, but actually the results and implications of what that feedback has caused is very negative, I think. Very negative, and it's just a classic Niantic cherry-picking. They've cherry-picked such a small, fine cherry out of the feedback of that thing that I don't even know how they can see it. It's ridiculous. we're moving into the 3-hour window kind of discussion and Niantic's community vibe with the whole thing. So their viewpoint is 3 hours gives more opportunity for more people to interact with each other. But actually, it doesn't work like that, Niantic, because 3-hour window, even if the community day mon is rubbish, you still won't get people out to play the event. Like, you could make the community day 1 hour. If it's a bad community day, there will be less people less inclined to go out to play it. And that's the problem. They're misreading their data and their stats over the last X amount of years because it's kind of obvious. If only 5% of players do the full 6 hours, surely that if they actually read it and went, hey, this is because the events are bad, you don't need to be a genius to go, we used to do Bagon and Beldon and Larvitar and Gen 3 starter community days, and now we're doing Hoppip and Sandshrew. It's unbelievable. But Niantic with the 3-hour window are forcing this community, blinkers on community, and actually forcing this community aspect on people and the player base to the detriment and degrade of a lot of other aspects of the game. Forcing a fake community onto Pokemon Go by reducing the event time frame and making Incensed worse. And they shortened, do you remember this? I know it's kind of old news, but they shortened raid timers. And the case in point with that is that however long ago, I can't remember how long ago it was, raids used to hatch, they used to take an hour to hatch, and they used to be on the map, on the gym, for an hour. But then Niantic went, we're going to make it 45 minutes, so that more people have a shorter time window, so they can more likely interact. But when they did that change, we'd already implemented, like local communities had already sorted around Niantic's lack of a social talking platform. You couldn't coordinate raids through Pokemon Go. You still can't to this day. People had Facebook, WhatsApp, Telegram groups, Discords set up over the last, whatever it was, year or so prior to that, so they could coordinate raids. We had raid maps and trackers and stuff. We still have those to this day, where you can actually look at a map of your area and go, right, that raid's hatching XYZ, then you could plan a route if you wanted to do a raid train. But that Niantic, it feels like they're lagging behind by 2 years with their info and their brain processing. Let's make it 45 minutes so more people have a chance to interact within the shorter time frame. In reality, when it happened, I was like, well, 45 minutes is still a bloody long time. That's a long chunk of time, really. So you could have somebody who turns up at the beginning of the raid, can't do it. Somebody who turns up in the middle of the raid, can't do it because there's no people. And then people arrive at the last minute and a few people have missed it. That's the philosophy that we're stuck with again. It's rinse and repeat with Niantic, is that they're thinking more people will partake and interact with each other because it's a 3-hour window. It's not that simple. What they've done now is they've actually, like I said, they've removed the choice, the freedom that you could have if you didn't play Pokemon Go or couldn't do the full 6 hours, to pick and select when you could do your community day and partake and possibly meet up with people. I don't really. It boggles my mind that Niantic don't think that we talk to each other on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, WhatsApp. There are so many social media platforms, yet Niantic think we all live in the dark ages and have to meet in person. It's like, no, we can coordinate and organise and meet up ourselves, you cretins. If you look at something they did in terms of trying to get people to go out and about and play a bit more, so this choice, shortening the community day window to 3 hours from 6, versus what they did on Hoppip community day. Now I know Hoppip itself, terrible mon. Like a bad community day in my view, very bad community day choice. But it was triple catch Stardust, which is a good bonus, so you go hardcore for that. And it was a new shiny because Johto Tour was coming up. What they did for that, if you remember, is that in parks, in big green spaces, to encourage people to more than likely go out and about, they had Skiploom, the evolved form of Hoppip, appearing in parks. and that meant you could get guaranteed XL and even more boosted dust. That was a good addition to a community day. That was an added bonus to make people go, hey, I might go and play in the park today, rather than maybe just sit in a cafe and get 3 shiny Hoppip and hope for a PvP IV1. I could actually go and get some more Stardust if I go to the park for Skiploom. Whereas this time they're going, if you can't play 2 to 5, screw yourself. That's the message. They should be adding more things to make Community Day better if you do go to a park, if you go and meet up with people. They have got something in this Community Day which is trying to bring that out, but it's a weird one, and we'll come on to it a bit later, I think. The 3-hour window, Niantic, actually reduces the community, because a shorter time window of Community Day means that players will be more focused on their solo grind for the day than actually possibly interacting with people. Because actually, this is a new shiny, it's a new Pokemon, it will be Pokédex on the day, so people will want to go hardcore to get shinies, good IV1s, PvP IV1s if you want. That was a random word. XL candies. But it being a new Pokemon means people are going to go, right, I need to get the resources and the Pokemon. So actually having a shorter window, I genuinely, and it will be case in point, we'll see what happens on Community Day. I don't think I'm going to stop grinding. I'll do the full 3 hours. I probably won't talk to people. You know, I really won't talk to people. I'm going to go flat out for 3 hours. It's actually going to make people interact with each other less, because you can't pause. You know, Community Day for 6 hours, you could have lunch in the middle of it, you know, grab a coffee or something like that. This one, you have to go, if you are like me, go balls to the wall on it, because it's new shiny, try and chase for a new Hundo, Pokédex, etc., new candy, new XL candy. So, if anything, this probably was the wrong Community Day Pokemon to pick for this experiment, Niantic. If you'd done this the month before, so you'd switched Alolan and Kanto Sandshrew with Stufful, or whatever the frickin' hell the teddy bear's called. If you put this Community Day Pokemon in March and put Sandshrew for April, I guarantee you'd have the exact you'd have the problem that people still don't bother with 3 hours for Sandshrew, because it's Sandshrew. But your experiment will clearly dictate that people want to go for 3 hours on this April Community Day because it's a new Pokemon with a new shiny. That's Niantic gearing their own experiment towards success and actually giving a false positive, as it were. In Niantic's endless self-contradiction, basically, 3 hours, they always talk about going out to explore. We want you to go out and explore. We want you to visit and power up Pokestops to give us free data, etc. We want you to do community meetups. 3 hours means less time to do that. It means less time exploring, less time talking to people. And this is the same company who, months ago, tried to claim that 80 meters of a Pokestop radius, that reduced exploration. So apparently, having an extra 40 meters on a Pokestop reduces exploration, but reducing a com day from 6 hours to 3 doesn't. You know, which one of those requires you to walk around and interact with the game and people? It's the Community Day. The Community Day is the exploring one, even if you play it from your local park, or if you go to a new town and play it. You are walking around the map. You're walking around in the real world, talking to people and interacting with stops, etc. The Pokestop radius, as we said in the hashtag Heroes Niantic and open letters, basically, is two things. It's just a point of interest that at this point you probably already visited all of your local ones, and also it's an item collection thing. It's something you spin for resources, not the key element of exploration. I'm not going to go sit here, like we said, way back. You can check it out if you feel like a little bit of reminiscing. I'm not going to sit here and go, oh my god, I need to go and visit the Friendship Tree plaque that's on Ealing Green to explore for the day. No, I'll casually spin it as I'm walking by while I'm hunting for shiny cottony because it's an item drop. It's Niantic cherry picking or choosing to be deliberately obtuse with their own information and their own viewpoint, what they want for exploration. Continuing on from that, actually, exploration, apparently having an incense spawn every 5 minutes compared to once every 1 minute encourages exploration, according to Niantic. Actually having this is it, they're put in a lure module bonus for this community day, where if at a lure on a Pokestop enough Pokemon are caught around that Pokestop on the community day in April, it will receive a temporary buff for XP. You'll get 4 times catch XP instead of 3 times catch XP for Pokemon caught around that area. Does that not encourage you to stand completely still and not explore? I read that and I was like, that's the most backward, stupid thing. I mean, it's a great bonus, great, but in terms of them bracketing it as exploration, that's the exact freaking opposite, isn't it? You're sitting there in one location, catching Pokemon around one area because you're going to get an XP boost. So in that circumstance, and genuinely, lure modules are 2 minutes per spawn more effective than incense while stationary. So genuinely, for this community day, if you have mobility issues, if you have any difficult getting around, if you can do, my recommendation is find a cafe, find a pub, find somewhere that you could sit at that has a Pokestop at it, and then you might have to drop the lure for the 3 hours, drop one lure for 3 hours, or you might be able to capitalise on somebody else's lure for free. You will get more spawns off the lure module sat still on your ass this community day than if you put an incense down. Like, in terms of what they bracket it as, exploration, this is moronic. This is utterly stupid. Anyway, moving on to another point. The final one for the 3 hours, and this is a personal one for me, and it will dictate what I do in terms of content and stuff. For a 3-hour community day, I am vastly less inclined to travel anywhere than my local spot, my local grind spot, for the community day. Because 3 hours, most places that you want to go and visit and stuff, certainly kind of where I'm living, you know, I'll more than likely spend more time travelling to and from the location than I will do playing the community day. And I know that's very me-centric. Other people might have a completely different take on it, which is fine. But for me personally, I'm not inclined to go anywhere else for a 3-hour community day. I'm just, seriously, if it's a 3-hour community day going forwards, I will just play in Walpole Park because it's easier, no petrol cost, no travel cost, and when I'm done, I could go and get dinner with my mates and then just edit straight away. Like, if it's a 6-hour thing, you can make a day of it. If you want to go somewhere to a different town or whatever, it encourages you to say, like, right, I can spend the whole day, 6 hours, going to a different town, exploring, getting new Pokestops for whatever, getting the POI exploration bonus that Niantic is so freaking hung up on, possibly meeting new people, meeting new communities and stuff. 3-hour window doesn't encourage that, for me anyway. Let's move on to possible solutions. It might be a little bit shorter, this section, but possible solutions to the whole problem is, obviously, one, they put it back and keep it as a 6-hour window. That would probably, in my view, be the best solution, because as we've said multiple times on the podcast and on here, if you don't want to do the full 6 hours, don't do the full 6 hours. No one's got a gun to your head. Like, you don't have to bother doing it. If you suffer from FOMO, like fear of missing out, I'm afraid that's a you problem. Really, it's not Niantic's responsibility to cut a community day in half because of it. And if you happen to be working majority of the community day, at least you should be able to get a tiny bit of the community day for 6 hours in somewhere. But like I said, extra bonuses for playing in parks or group bonuses. In essence, if they put the learn module bonus in place before reducing incense, or if they hadn't reduced the incense while stationary, it would make a lot of sense. But because they've made the incense worse while stationary, but then on community they're like, hey, we're going to buff the learn module stuff. That's why I gave it a massive downer just a moment ago. In reality, it's actually a good bonus. It's a really good bonus and a good idea. It's just hampered by the context and the situation and the timing it's been put in place. So more bonuses for going out to play in parks, for visiting new Pokestops maybe. Hey, maybe they say like, if you visit a new town, you spin a new Pokestop on Community Day and you put a lure on it, you can get like, you know, twice the spawns off it or something. I don't know, there's loads of different things they could do. Like there's the guaranteed XL thing for playing in a park, guaranteed XL per catch, more Stardust or whatever. There's many things they could do to make you want to play outside in a park on the Community Day, rather than saying, hey, we're going to reduce the time window and make it worse, X, Y, Z. Something that I saw on Twitter today, and I don't think it's a terrible idea, I think it's quite an interesting one, ticket registration, where it's a 3-hour Community Day, but they give you basically 10 hours, like a GoFest time schedule essentially, and they say, when can you play? And I know this goes against Niantic's blinkered view of everyone has to play together for 3 hours, but you could say, hey, I can play in the morning 9 till 12, or if you want to do the old com day, which is 11 till 2, then you could tick that if you're an afternoon person, 2 to 5. And then the final one is say I'm a late person because I work in the morning or whatever. I could do 4 till 7 or something like that. Having that still gives players the choice, but it also gives Niantic a potential spike in interest, because give people the ticket, much like a Safari Zone thing actually, where people go, hey, who can go to the Safari Zone in Seville? You organise, you book the same day. Me and Master27, Ian Waterfall, Francesco, loads of people have all said, right, we're going to go and play on the Friday the 13th of May. Cool, we'll book our tickets, all play on the same day. This ticket option for a community day would encourage local communities to probably talk to each other, say, hey, who's going to be able to play this time window? Me too, cool, we'll meet up and play together. Finally, and this would be good just overall, make the incense and the lures better on a community day, even if you're stationary. You know, like, buff the incense to 1 spawn per minute on community days, because that would keep it. That would mean you could get, what, 112 spawns, I think, if you were sat... No, 112, that's wrong, that's just doubling it, isn't it? We need to times it by 5, which I can't do in my head because I'm terrible at mental maths. But you could get a lot more spawns on the incense on the community day. That helps people with mobility issues who can't go out and play. The lure module bonus as well means that if you happen to be on a Pokestop as well, you can get bonuses for that. That's an incentive to make people want to go and play a bit more. It also increases the effectiveness of the 3-hour window because you get more spawns. If you think of anything else, I did whip this list together reasonably quickly. Leave a comment in the comment section below. What would you do to improve the 3-hour window circumstance? What would you do to potentially make it more accessible to other people? Let me know. The incense changes. Now, I've been reasonably quiet on the channel in terms of this because we were covering it on the podcast. We took our time on the podcast. We sort of got our thoughts collected. It was on episode 58 if you want to go and listen to that, of Incensed, a Pokemon Go podcast. We talk about that, the Incense Changes, the pros, the cons over the matter, which was very, very good. I held off. I had to I got some thoughts together, and then a lot of other stuff happened, so I haven't been able to make a video on it. But the incense forcing you to move around, to go outside, to explore. A lot of people don't tend, human nature doesn't tend to respond well to being forced to do anything, particularly if it's just a game where you're sort of like, right, I can get 5 more spawns per minute, or not per minute or whatever. If I get 1 spawn every minute, if I'm walking constantly at 200 meters per minute off this item, versus sat still and when I actually need to use an incense, okay, the end result is I'm not going to use incense. That's the logic. That's the logic for me. It's the logic for a lot of people saying like, I'm just not using Incense anymore. So Niantic have lost out on that the small revenue stream, admittedly, but it's still a revenue stream nonetheless. Much like the Pokestop thing, much like shortening the community day window, incense effectiveness or reducing incense effectiveness doesn't equal exploration. There's no direct tie. As I said on the podcast, I don't know if there's any player who would utter the words, I'm going to go and explore my local park because I can use an incense there, or drop an incense and get 1 spawn per minute. It's not a reason to go and explore at all. It's a really backwards way of thinking. It's an extra thing that, until the pandemic, was useless. During the pandemic, it became kind of a staple of the game and actually quite usable as an item. Very, very good, and very useful if, for whatever reason, you were working from home, unable to go out, XYZ. It gave you the gameplay capability to still play and interact with the game while not moving around. The gameplay, when you go out and about to play Pokemon Go, you are generally, more than likely, going to encounter wild spawns, even if you are in a rural area on a hiking trail or something. When I did Snowdon, I hiked Snowdon twice last year, 2 or 3 different paths up the mountain. There were spawns on the paths because it maps them on the map. It goes, hey, there's a footpath here, we're going to put a few spawns on there. There were no Pokestops, but you know, if the incense, because of the rate you were walking up that mountain, up Snowdon, you were probably not covering the required distance per minute to be able to get a spawn off your incense every minute. So the wild spawns were kind of the only thing. I did have an incense running back in the day because it was actually usable. But my point is, what is my point actually? You don't tend, me personally, don't tend to drop an incense while just going out and about normally, because you are encountering Pokemon anyway. So what's the point, you know, of getting 1 or 2 extra Pokemon because the incense is kind of flawed anyway? This is going to be quite a short list in terms of the incense negative implications and stuff, because it's just another thing that Niantic have kind of just done, and then like not too much is really happening about it, which is it's a shame. We talked a lot about it on the podcast, I say, so that's kind of like where I channeled my thoughts and feelings. So that podcast I definitely recommend going to listen to. But the incense, you know, it's only negatively impacting people who have inability to move at the required distance per minute. It's only making their gameplay worse. Anybody who can go out and about, you go out and about to your park, to the city centre or something. You're moving around, collecting Pokestops and items, and getting natural spawns anyway. The incense was good for people who were at home due to whatever reason, work, mobility issues, etc. And the incense at the moment is like a switch. It's either on if you are doing 200 meters per second, Jesus Christ, 200 meters per minute constantly. The moment you stop, even if it's GPS drift, even if it's catching a Pokemon, spinning a stop, buying a coffee, the incense becomes pointless and worthless. It's like it just turns itself off, so it's very poorly and clunkily designed. Now let's have a little recap of the Pokestop shenanigans that we thwarted back in August of 2021, shall we? So, Niantic wanted to put in place some changes, and they wanted to change the Pokestop radius from 80 meters, which in reality actually never was. It was never actually up to 80 meters. It was boosted slightly, but it wasn't actually a full 80 meters, and it still isn't to this day. They wanted to reduce that extended radius down to the original 40 meters, which would have been more like 20 meters with their weird, I don't know, their weird distancing and everything. And they viewed this because they wanted to encourage people to go out and explore and community. So what we did, as you may remember, we raised hell on social media. The content creators and the community leaders got together, got a letter put out, constructed, etc. And we trended number 2 worldwide on Twitter because Niantic weren't listening. And then they actually, stopped, thought, oh yes, people don't like this, and actually reverted it back. So that was a change we did manage to do, but the amount of shouting required to get it implemented was extraordinary. And as far as it goes, a game developer of a mobile game, certainly a mobile game, should pay more attention to its community, because if they want their mobile game to continue to be successful, they kind of need to listen to what the players are kind of saying. Like, if we all don't like this thing, maybe don't do that thing. The Pokestop is exactly the same as the incense effectiveness. It makes it basically less accessible for those people who struggle with mobility and other bits and pieces that would stop someone from maybe going outside, etc. But it also just makes it more clunky to play, because it means that what we said is like, Pokestops are not, as Niantic view, exploration. They are things to get items from. Nobody really goes, "Ooh, I'm going to go to that Pokestop and look at the image of it because of Pokemon Go." It's like an aside. That's what we said. The exploration from a Pokestop is very much an aside from the Pokemon catching aspect of the game. The reason they were doing this, and they implemented the feature not too long after, Niantic were bringing in the Power Up a Pokestop feature, which requires you to AR scan a location, a point of interest, and then what they do is they give you a few tiny little bonuses and items and stuff increase for you in-game in exchange for free labour and their ability to collect the data that you send in on POIs through scanning it and sell it for big bucks on their AR database. That's why they wanted to reduce the Pokestop radius, because they wanted to force people closer to Pokestops to try and enforce people to do Pokestop scans so they can get free AR data. That's the underlying thing here, is that Niantic, they're saying, oh, exploration community. It's bollocks, frankly. The whole thing with every one of these things is they want Pokemon Go to be an augmented reality AR collection database, whereas actually if they stopped and looked at the App Store or the Google Play Store or the Android equivalent, it's listed under mobile games. It's not listed under maps and trackers and navigation and all of that sort of stuff. It's a mobile game featuring Pokemon that happens to be Pokemon Go and go outside and explore and stuff. I do think that message is very, very clear, and I stand by it, and I enjoy that exponentially. It's a very, very good game at its core. It just so happens that it's dressed up in a load of hair and fluff and dirt by a company that couldn't give less of a toss. It's the unfortunate truth of it. Now, my favourite section, Niantic's issues, and we've already addressed a few of them. A lot of people have said, and it becomes very clear, the more and more we do this, the more and more we go into it, Niantic have one vision for Pokemon Go, and God forbid anybody who tries to interject and change that vision in any way, will just ignore whatever people like about the game and stuff. We are doing this, and no matter what, we are doing this. Yeah, no matter if it makes the game less accessible to players who've picked up the game since the pandemic, who've enjoyed the bonuses, who created worldwide communities through either Discord or content creation or anything like that. Niantic don't care. They may say they care about community, but they don't. They really don't. They have their vision and that's it. We've already talked about the AR and the sort of fake community aspect that they go for. The key point with that, actually, the fake community is, remember Sandshrew Community Day? They had a few in-person event things where they said, like, hey, come to this location, you'll get a few bits and pieces, possibly boosted Pokestops. They tweeted endlessly about 1 or 2 or 3 of those specific meetups with pictures and say, we had a really good community day. Whereas actually they should have looked at it, or they won't have looked at it because, blinkers on, focus on community. Sandshrew Community Day was a washout for the rest of the world. The rest of the community, Sandshrew Community Day was just dreadful. It's the first community day in the longest time where I just agreed to call it a day after 4 hours and thought, I can't be bothered anymore. They are doing a sort of classic, look at this media of community and community posts and community meetups is good. without actually thinking like vast majority of people are not experiencing such a thing because of the quality of the game and the event itself. And again, that ties into the fact they're promoting the community aspect for Sanctuary Community Day and all of that with real life in-person meetups, yet 5% of people only played 3 hours. Oh, sorry, that's the other way around, isn't it? 5%, only 5% of people played more than 3 hours on Sanctuary Community Day-ish. Bit weird, I would say. Finally, to round out today's kind of rant / destruction of Niantic, overall, the Community Day changes, it really, actually, in terms of me personally as a creator, doesn't affect me. Like, genuinely. The whole thing I've gone through doesn't affect me in any way. Because essentially what happens is that it just means that I have to play for 3 hours, so there's less footage for me to copy, less footage for me to edit, so there's a shorter video, so it's less time to export, so it's easier to upload and quicker for me to get the day done. You know, as other content creators on social media have said, I like this shorter format. I don't like it, but it does make it easier. But my main gripe with the whole thing is that the way that they've implemented this, again, much like the Incense, I failed to mention this in the Incense discussion, they said in a previous blog post, if we make any major changes to pandemic bonuses, we'll give you a month's notice, a month's warning as to the date of when that will become effective. Incense, reverting to one spawn every 5 minutes, they gave people less than a day. If you're Australia or New Zealand, you woke up to the Incense being terrible again. So it's going back against what they said in a previous Community Day post, which I don't know if in any legal standpoint has any bearing or whatever, or if it's actually possible to put that against Niantic and say, like, you said you do this and you haven't kept your word. To go back to summarising, I know we sort of did a little flick back to whatever, but the way that they've implemented this, the way that they've taken feedback and taken it out of context as far as I'm aware, doesn't sit well with me. That factor doesn't sit well with me. And what they've done, in short, is for the majority of people, for the majority of trainers, it takes the freedom of the access of a Community Day out of it. Pre-pandemic, that was always the biggest complaint from a Community Day, is that people who couldn't access it with a 3-hour window, who were working, who were unable to join, said, I'm missing out on the Community Day because of my schedule. I can't change my schedule, so what the hell's going on? Now we're back to that exact thing. We've had the 6-hour Community Days for 2 years, which actually gave people the choice. Choice is a key word in this, and Niantic are taking choice away. And once again, they're getting the wrong end of the stick with everything, as I said. Their actions are a misinterpretation of feedback and data collection, and somehow, and I don't know how, but they need a long, hard sit down, possibly on a cactus that's very spiky, that would be very preferable, to realise that it's their choice of events and event content that is negatively impacting gameplay duration and community interactions. We haven't, like, in terms of legendary raids, me and my local crew haven't done a raid train for about a year, I think. Rayquaza raid weekend in March of 2021 was the last true raid grind, because it was Rayquaza out for 2 days, out for a weekend, and you say, right, I'm going to go ham because it's a good legendary raid boss, people love the shiny, people want to raid. Whereas everything else, you can't expect people to want to raid, you know, Regice or Registeel or whatever, or, you know, a Genesect form that has no shiny. It's that thing. You can't expect people to want to play 6 hours of Community Day. The vast majority, I would say, some people like myself would go, right, I'm just going to go ham for 6 hours and see what I can get. Everything is a dust grind. Majority of people say, it's a shiny that's been out for X amount of years. I only need one Kanto shiny. I may, if you're a PvPer, go for a PvP IV. If I can get a hundo, it's cool. But if I'm done after 1 to 3 hours, I'm done, because it's a bad com day. So Niantic, make sure you bring back good Community Days that focus on raid meta attackers a bit more, and make people want to stay for the grind to get XLs, candy, lots of good IV ones, multiple of the same Pokemon for raid parties. You can't expect people to go ham for a Sandshrew or a Hoppip with a Community Day move that doesn't even massively impact the PvP game. How can we vocalize to Niantic? Well, the best we can do is simply that. Just vocalize your displeasure with the change, either through social media platforms and stuff, get involved with the conversation, through in-game support as well. Try to be critical and constructive with the feedback. Don't target anyone specifically, because there is a team behind this, a team of blithering idiots, I will say, but naming and shaming people is not the way to go. Don't just say, it's bad, it's this, screw you, because that's not going to get us anywhere. We look at the implementation of the letter for the Pokestop radius change. That was very, very well put together, very well constructed. Lots of good points, lots of very helpful detailing as to why it's a bad idea. That got through. I know it took severe social media traction to get it going, but it's all we can do, unfortunately, is bang your head against the wall of the support channel for as long as you dare. And also, if you agree with what I've said in this video, if you share my point of view, or if you think something I've said is worthwhile, do share the video. Share the video on social media in some way, and comment below what your thoughts and feelings are on the matter. To finalise, this post is going to pretty much round out the video from Reddit. Just seen the username. It's Milo2406. Okay, I didn't do this. This isn't me. I want to thank JRHKayleigh for actually posting this as well on Twitter. But I think it's on the Sylph Road and Sylph GG subreddits, etc. This is somewhere. Basically, imagine the scenario: Niantic get hold of either a gym or a fast food franchise, and they go, "We found that only 5% of our members work out for longer than 1 hour, so we will only be opening the gym for 1 hour per day." Fast food franchise owners: "We found that only 5% of our customers spend longer than 20 minutes inside the store, so we will only open the dining area for 20 minutes per day." That is in essence what Niantic have done, is they've gone, we've seen that some data and stats point to this, so we're going to do that. Rather than having a step back and going, actually maybe there's a bigger picture here. Not everybody is going to be playing the Community Day for the full 6 hours, because we've all got other stuff to do. Maybe not me. Haha, Pokemon Go is basically what I do. A lot of people have other things going on in their lives, and they can't or won't spend 6 hours playing a Sandshrew or a Hoppip Community Day, or a Stufful Community Day. And I don't see how we can change Niantic's output or outlook on that whole scenario. I genuinely don't, because if they can't see that the last 2 years of Community Days versus the first 2 years of Community Days are any different, we've got no freaking hope. Final point is, everybody, as I said at the beginning, everyone's entitled to their opinion, and if you disagree with me, you're totally entitled. I'm not going to say that somebody's wrong, etc. I'm simply voicing my own opinion through the medium of YouTube and video, and that's exactly what I've done. And I've listed several points, lots and lots of points, as to why I think these are bad changes and are stupid. But that's going to do it for today's video. Like I said, let me know in the comments if you agree, disagree, have different ways that we could potentially make a sort of good half and half on the matter. But all I'm going to say is, thanks very much for watching, everybody. Please do hit the subscribe button if you are new, with notifications on, so you don't miss future uploads and future live streams. And hit the like button if you enjoyed or agreed with the video, but it's not really the important thing for this one today. And yeah, all I can hope is that Niantic's experiment for April 2022 Community Day shows them how stupid they are being with their rationale and attitude towards gameplay, community, and all of that gubbins. And all that's left to say is tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow, if I can get everything edited, there should be a 24-hour grind, first 24-hour grind of 2022, featuring the Lush Jungle event and Hunt for Shiny Cottony and Hunt for Shiny Paras. I'll post up on the community tab, so keep an eye on the community tab on YouTube as to the schedule and how that's going to go. I hope I can get it edited, but it is a big video. So I will see you all for that as a live premiere, and good luck on Cottony's weekend spotlight. Hopefully you can get the orange one. Yeah, I want the orange one from the weekend. It'll be really nice. Anywho, I'm going to say, do take care.